I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. My goal here is to help us all connect, inspire, and create. Every week, a new guest joins us to share a bit of inspiration, creativity, and tips on how you can improve your photography. Upcoming presentations can be found on my website at lindanickell.com. And under Happiness Hour, you'll find the links to my YouTube channel and our community blog. Erin Randall is here tonight to monitor the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and you can connect with her at admilyoracoaching.com. Say hello, Erin.
Hello, Erin.
On your next business, will you please pick something easier that I can pronounce?
Probably not, because I chose that specifically because I knew it would be a mouthful for you, and you stumbled over it. I'm thoughtful that way.
Why don't you tell everybody what that means?
So ad meliora is Latin for to better things. And so because I'm coaching, we are, obviously going towards better things. So if you think of the word ameliorate, if you're ever trying to ameliorate a particular situation, that's the word.
Okay. See, we learn something every time you show up to the Happiness Hour.
And you still won't let me tell jokes. Crushed.
We learned something the last time you told a joke, to not let Erin tell any more jokes. All right, my guest tonight is Judy Royal Glenn. Judy is a nature and wildlife photographer based in Knoxville, Tennessee. Her passion for photography is fueled by her faith and her love for nature. In 2014, Judy developed the Hummingbird Trail at the State Botanical Garden of Georgia. And through her research and observations, she helped create a garden that would sustain beautiful little hummers. In this session, Judy will share her experience as a nature photographer to help us learn how to find hummingbirds in their natural habitat, and she'll offer her tips on how to photograph them. So welcome to the Happiness Hour, Judy.
Thank you.
All right, so let me get my screen back up here. I kind of gloss over. I kind of grab things from people's websites and their about pages, which is why it's important that everybody have an about page. So it's easy for people to find out information and get a feel of who you are. So if you've got a website, you don't have about page, that's another lesson. Please do that. So Judy, since I did gloss over just a little bit, is there something that you want to add or tell us something a little bit about how you got started with hummingbirds and nature, and just give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. Well, before I started with the digital camera, I of course did just the regular film camera and loved birds, would photograph them all the time. So then when it went digital, then I was real excited. And I ended up going to the State Botanical Garden of Georgia. 2011 was the first time I ever saw a hummingbird. And I was just enthralled by him. I was like, okay, oh my gosh, look, it's sticking out its tongue. Okay, then where are they sitting? Where are they going? And I wanted to know everything about them. And we'll talk a little bit about me starting the trail for them. But hummingbirds were my first passion, but now they're not my first passion. We were talking earlier about black bears. That's my favorite thing to photograph, are black bears. And Cades Cove is a totally different situation, but it's a wonderful place where they're used to humans. So it's in order: black bears, hummingbirds, and I've got a new passion, which is raising monarch butterflies. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. I have a surprise for everybody at the end. So then my shirt today, instead of dressing up fancy, I wanted to wear my monarchs, because if you go in my kitchen, I have a huge plant, which I just got off 1 million caterpillars. They're tiny, 2 millimeters. And I'm going to be raising them for the next 4 weeks. So I love them.
Well, I'm kind of excited because I don't want to rush you through this, but I know what the surprise is at the end. So let's get started.
Okay.
With hummingbirds. And I'm going to tell you, there's a couple of people in here that I haven't seen for a while. Alba. And I know that she is absolutely addicted to hummingbirds right now. So I knew that she would show up. So you're going to have a captured audience. So this is kind of cool.
Okay. So she basically did a wonderful intro. So I'm not even going to go into all that. But I taught school for 19 years I was a physical education teacher, and I had to quit teaching. I did some coaching and stuff as well, but this is where I am now. So I really love it. So she already shared this with you on the Happiness Hour on Instagram, this photo, but this is basically how I like to shoot. I like to find a single flower, blurred background, and I have a shallow depth of field, and I want all the attention to be just on the hummingbird. But the problem with this is usually I am standing at my tripod with my camera on it, waiting for the hummingbird to come to me, because me chasing hummingbirds doesn't work very well with a blurred background. So it's great when you're maybe at home in your own yard, but when you're at this big garden that I'm at, the State Botanical Garden of Georgia, that's what I'm typically doing. And we'll talk about a little warnings and stuff, especially rotator cuffs, standing at your tripod and your camera. But this is my main goal, is to have a blurred background. Now, I'm not so much big about the wings being completely still. I use natural light. I do not use a flash, but the slight blur of the wings does not bother me. It may bother some other people, but it doesn't bother me. So here's a little bit about the Hummingbird Trail. You will see these pictures in the presentation. But just for you to know that if you would like to go to the website, this has all of the flowers that they're feeding on. And at the very end, I will give you the information of how you can go to this page so you can see all the different flowers that the hummingbirds are feeding on. It's a great, great amount. So this is what someone can do if they come to the garden and they want to view the trail. They can go inside the conservatory, get a map, and then they can view the trail on their own. And then how to use this map, I tell people, depending upon how much time they would like to spend at each marker will determine how much of a photograph they'll get. Like if they 10 to 15 minutes, then maybe they'll get to see it. But if they really want to photograph it, they're going to have to stay quite a bit longer. And this is the map. So if you see all the pictures going around, can y'all see my cursor?
I can.
Okay,
Yeah.
super. So going all the way around, number one is right here. We have a nice little water feature going through. So then they're marked, and I'll show you the marker in just a minute. And they just on their own leisurely go through, and they can see what flowers are at each marker. So this is marker one, and this corresponds where they can find it. And then they used my photographs to put on the signage there. It's just been a big blessing for me to have this. For, gosh, was it 10 years? I had all this information of I could walk into the garden and at any time pretty much find where the hummingbirds were for all the time that I'd spent in the field. And I learned a whole lot from being in it. And later on, I'll share a little bit, but this is my research book here, and just all the notes of what flowers they fed on to where they were. And I just had a book full of knowledge. And I went to the garden and said, hey, would you be interested in having a Hummingbird Trail? And that's how the trail was born, is I had a bunch of knowledge and wanted to share it with other people. So this is what our signs look like. And you'll see this picture in just a minute. This was actually used from one of the photos that I took in the garden. And what I did was just used my own time. I wasn't getting paid for anything. And I would have these meetings. There'd be a couple each month, or each summer, I'm sorry. And then people would come through. I had tons of small groups and had a few larger groups. So I just really enjoyed that. So this is the one that was on the front of the brochure this year. I loved the pollen that was on there. But when I first started researching, I got very aggravated at the hummingbirds because all they would do was perch, 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 perch. So I said, well, hey, there's something to that. And what I'm going to share with you tonight is that knowledge of knowing where their favorite perches are will help your photography. Knowing about the hummingbirds will help your photography. because it will allow you to know their habits, where they're going, what flowers they are on, and it will help you have a better opportunity to find them and to photograph them. So the first thing too that I wanted to say is to know what you're looking at. This one is a male, but the sun is shining on it. This one is a male, but the sun is not shining on it, so it doesn't have that iridescence on it. And then this one is an example of not shooting at the golden hours, and you have a shadow on that. But for me, that doesn't bother me. I'm all about seeing them and photographing them, and it doesn't matter if I'm not catching them at the exact perfect lighting. So we're going to talk a little bit about knowing your hummingbird. So we just talked a little bit about the male. So now we'll talk about what I think is their favorite flower in the world is the purple salvia. Now I know that's not a great photo, but I wanted to include it so you could see it. In my garden, where we're getting ready to build a house within the next year, there's going to be plenty of purple salvia at my house, because they had a plethora of all these different flowers, and the main one they kept going to time and time again was the purple salvia. Now here's another one. They can see near ultraviolet spectrum, so they don't just go to red flowers, but they like tubular flowers as well. Now this one, I'm really disappointed in. Not using flash. That's the one thing I don't like about the golden hours for hummingbirds. Their wings are so fast and the ISO is so high, it's just really hard to capture it. But I was determined, and I stood at this flower and waited forever. And then once I did, the ISO was so terrible, then the wings were so blurred. And I love that I got him there, and it's beautiful, the bokeh, but his wings were too blurred for me. So I was very disappointed in that. And then this is another example of just knowing that they like different flowers and just waiting at a particular flower to take the picture. Now this one I did because I needed it for the brochure, because that particular, I forgot what number that was, like number 8 on the Hummingbird Trail. I needed a photo for that. Again, tubular flowers. This is canna lily. And this is a different kind of salvia. It's called a blue, or a salvia sage, is blue sage. And then here you can see that's an immature male. He's got speckles on his throat. But before the speckles were there, it was all white. And when it's all white, you don't know if it's an adult female or if it's an immature male or an immature female. So when it starts getting the speckles, you know that that's an immature male. Here's another one. Now the sun was not shining on it, so you see that darker color. And then this one was just sitting in the tree, and it did it a lot. And then I always like seeing their little fluffy bottoms that they had. And on perches. And if you look here, you can tell that's an immature male. And then this one, I did to show size comparison. This is on the major trumpet wheeler honeysuckle. And you can see the leaf here and how small he is. So basically the size of a business card is what you're looking at. So then they're therefore very difficult to find in the wild. The one thing I wanted to share here is they're kind of like humans in that they like to sit in the same place all the time. And this was in a totally different place in the back of the garden. And he loved this one particular perch. Now, another thing I'd like to share about this is you see the white part on the tail, and then that means it's either a female, an immature male, or an immature female. But when something else comes along, and this is a terrible photograph, but I just wanted to share, this dragonfly sat there and he got highly upset that something else was sitting on his perch. So he quickly chased it away. And it's cutting it off a little bit. Let's see if I can put it on one sec. There we go. And the second thing is just time. In order for me to capture this photo, I sat in a little chair on the ground and he came by, and luckily I had it, just pushed down the trigger and just held it down and shot a lot of frames per second. And this is one that I got. But I knew that this patch of flowers was one of the ones that it would go to where all the other ones hadn't opened up yet. So that's how I knew just to sit at this particular base of these plants. Now, when you are at the garden, you're not just looking at the flowers. Let's see if I can find this little guy. Here he is. Right here, he's sitting in a tree. And that's one of the main things that I want to, before we really start getting into photography, is to talk to you about is when you go out, you're looking for their perches. Okay, he's right here. But they're so small that they blend in. Here's another one right here. So if you find their perches, you have won half the battle. This guy loved to come back on this particular perch. Now this is Mufasa. No, actually it's a different one than Mufasa, but this is a particular plant branch, and he came out year after year to this same place. So if I ever wanted to look for a hummingbird in the garden, I would know to look there. Now this one you can't see very well. There are some claw marks, so you could tell he came back there time and time again. They love this yucca plant, I think is what it was called. And then watch where they go when they visit the flower. Watch where they go when they fly away. That's where they're going, is back to their perch a lot of times. Now this one I really liked, but I really had to work at it. So working your scene when you come to a hummingbird, my first view was not that. It was more towards this way. And this is Mufasa. He would go to this branch next year. The leaf in the trees were starting to die. And the next one is just to be still when you're out. Here's another one where this was his favorite perch, and he chased away that bird. So they're preening when they're up in the trees. And or here he is taking a bath on wet leaves. We're enjoying the water. And then while they're away at the flowers, you need to listen. And then I've got pulled up on here a couple of audios. Now this one's a different one. This is when the male is actually displaying for the female. So he's flying in front of her like this. So these are sounds that you need to listen for. Here's this one. That was real short. So when I was at the Botanical Garden this past weekend, I heard two different hummingbirds. So that was real exciting. So just to know the sounds. And these guys are really curious. I've actually had one come within this far from my pocket. This one was just checking me out. And what I do a lot is I pray and I ask the Lord to show me or bring to me what he wants me to photograph. And this was in September 2015. And if you look, there's just one little flower. This garden went all the way over, had another half on the other side. And the curator of the flower garden came and asked me, he says, come here, I want to show you a story, tell you one. Here it is closer. So what happened was there was a gentleman that worked at the garden and he was tragically killed in a car accident. And this was his favorite flower. So around the anniversary of his death came up. And I wanted to photograph that because I thought that was basically a miracle in itself. It's September. They don't bloom in September, and the anniversary of his death was coming up. So I had my tripod set up. I did a timer where I set the timer. I did it for a 3-second delay. My hands were off, and it took a series of photos. I did that several times. And then when I looked at the back of the camera, this is what I got. So in the 3 seconds, my hand was off of the camera because I'm focused here. As you can see where it's sharp. A hummingbird slipped in to feed off that flower. It just blew me away. So the title of this photo is called Two Miracles. If you're lucky enough, you'll get to find a nest. Now this, it was just a miracle that we found it. I was taking a group through the trail, and we saw a hummingbird. She was fluttering up in the trees, and then she immediately sat down on her nest right in front of us, but I didn't see it. A lady did. So for 3 weeks, I sat under that. And this is my first video. Y'all let me know what you think. But she starts away from the nest, and then she flies up to the nest. So the baby's real tiny. It's only like this big. And I shoot at usually 1/60th of a second. And then use my exposure compensation to make the video brighter. And then here's another one later when it was big. She actually, it's a little slower, but she actually fed it on the leaf. Now I blew out the highlights. Here's a photo. You can see the baby's beak. It's real small. And then that's one thing too, if you ever find a nest, you're trying to look for, when you photograph it, just certain special moments. And I just thought it was real special that these two crossed each other like that.
While we're on this, there's a question that Sue had, and she was curious as to how high up those nests are.
They can get really, really high. This one was probably 25 feet high. So not real high, but they can go really high. So I was glad that it didn't go up super high. And then this is, what's crazy is the mama has to go so long feeding these guys. If you'll notice how much smaller she is compared to the baby. This is the baby. And how you know it's the baby is it's got orange right here. The mama's is all black. So then using flash a little bit, this was in Jamaica. It's the nickname of it is the black hummingbird, because if you were to look at it, it looks black. So it is important to use a flash when you take these photos, and you can see the iridescence of the hummingbird. And this is another one. Gosh, oh, what is his name? Streamer tail. Oh, just totally blanked. But they have a super, super long tail. And these two are just indigenous to Jamaica. And then what I was going to say about photography with this is we went on a cruise. All of my cruises are based upon usually where the hummingbirds are. So it's just to research. So I went on the internet and I said, hey, I'm going to be here. And then I wanted to know where I could find them. So we hired a driver. We drove up to this tall mountain. And this guy had little liquor bottles, but had sugar water in them. And then you could hand feed these little hummingbirds and they would come right up to you, which it was totally amazing. But I wanted you to hear how his chirping is different than our, like in Georgia and Tennessee, it's the ruby-throated hummingbird. Listen to his chirp. Now you can tell he is not a full male because he didn't have a long tail like this one did. So he's full adult. This one's immature. And then here are the two of them. I'll just show a brief clip, being territorial and fighting each other. This is in Jamaica. That was all of that. And then I was going to go through kind of telling you how to train them to feed out of your hand. You can get these on, I guess, Amazon. My friend gave me one. It's got sugar water in it. So what I did was I took down all my feeders and then sat the feeder right there. You can see I've got some Velcro on the bottom and I just got it used to that. And then here's what I got from it. So I'm actually sitting in my rocking chair, and this is cell phone video. And then after they got used to me sitting there, I put it in my hand. And then a male hummingbird came and fed. This is, excuse my back deck, but then this is what, and then I'll show you this here. When you're doing cell phone video, this little guy is like its own little tripod. And so you take your cell phone, put it, I had it on the railing, I guess, or maybe I was hand holding this one. I think it was hand holding this one. And then you could shoot cell phone video holding it. But this is my favorite. So I volunteered at a food shelter, and they were going to throw these flowers out. So I asked if I could have one. They said, sure. So I took this feeder, I put it in the flower. I got my clean background. This is on my back deck on my railing. And then this is what I was able to get video. This is a Rufus hummingbird out in California. Now this guy, that was his perch. And he just let me set my tripod up, camera up, just straight on to him. And then this is one that hit our conservatory window at the Botanical Garden, and somebody came and got me because they knew that I did hummingbirds, not that I knew how to take care of them. So I picked this little guy off the hot cement, put him in the grass, and he eventually came back too and flew away. It was amazing. All right, so now before we get into all the resources, I'm going to go over the photography part. So I shoot Nikon D810. My workhorse lens that I do is the smaller 200 to 500. I shouldn't say smaller, it's a pretty big lens, but it's very heavy. So my husband just recently let me get the new 500 prime, but not the $1 million one. And I really, really, really love it. And so we talked a little bit about the golden hours. Everybody knows when to shoot, but with their wings going 53 times per second, it's very difficult to get them frozen. So I do a little bit different than other photographers. I shoot all manual, but then I float the ISO. So that way I have control of the aperture and the shutter speed. And then I just let the ISO float. And at the end, I'm going to show you a real good resource, if you don't already have it, of how to get rid of all that noise. Because as photographers, we know that noise is not our friend. So I shoot with, if it's still, if it's sitting on a branch, I'll do AFS. I'll get a single focus right on the eye closest to me. And then if it's in flight, then I do AFC, and then I'll just track it as it's flying. Now, I have not gotten into the 3D subject tracking yet because I didn't know if it would pick up on a hummingbird. So I'd love to hear if anybody else has a 3D and is picking up hummingbirds. Then I take a test shot, and you can look at the histogram and you can see. I know some people are just cell phone photographers. So if you look at the histogram and you see the bar running all the way to the right, then you know that you've overexposed, and then you need to pull it back down. Or you can set up on your phone to get the blinkies. And then if anything's overexposed, then it'll blink at you. And same thing for video too. They call it the zebras. And anything that's overexposed will have lines going through it. And then you could change your exposure compensation so that it'll go away so you can get a better shot. And then, like I said earlier about working your subject, if you remember the hummingbird sitting with the red background, we've already talked about that, is just keep moving around until you find a beautiful bokeh background or a certain color. And then, you know, if you're shooting, that you always want your shadow facing your subject, sun to the back. So then it's lighting up your hummingbird's face.
And Judy, are you trying to show us something? Because we're just looking at the resource screen.
Oh, no. I'm just, no.
Okay. How about taking that down? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
And then as far as flash, people have different opinions. Some people don't like to use flash for any wildlife. But for me, I have it, don't know how to use it yet. But like I said, in order to get the iridescence off the different hummingbirds, then you'll want to use a flash to get that. Now, also another thing to research is eBird. I have used that before to find different wildlife, and it's a great resource. And blinds, I know someone was talking about a blind earlier. When I was out in Texas one time, they had a blind. I knew that there was a certain type of hummingbird that I wanted. So then I sat in there and waited for it. Perches, I don't use perches, but what you could do is get a tripod, put a flower on it that the hummingbirds will like, and just sit and wait. And then you're not having to go to a garden. Okay, the warnings I was going to tell you about, I really messed up my rotator cuffs. We talked briefly about that, so just be real careful. And then the heavy backpacks too. I learned to just go with the light backpack and then rapid strap, have my camera there. So there's a new piece of equipment. It's my my dead cat on a microphone, and I just started using that, and hasn't been very long, but trying to get the wind sound out of my videos, I think is real important. Sorry, my throat is going out, so I'm trying to be short and brief with my talking. I do have a teleconverter. It's the 1.4, and that helps me get a lot more reach for my photos, and it really helps with the hummingbirds. I have a Really Right Stuff tripod and a Wimberley head, which I really, really love. So the technology that I want to tell you about, if y'all aren't familiar with it, I'm sure most of you are, is Topaz AI. That helps to get all the noise out of your photos. And for me, it was a game changer. Like a lot of my photos, I would do less of a shutter speed so that it would not put so much noise. And now I really don't have to worry about it. But I could just take one with a lot of noise and not worry about it. Also, you could take the Color Effects Pro 4. And if you're looking at the picture that's on there, you can make the background darker. And that's really good. So it'll draw your eye to whatever it is that you're photographing, especially hummingbirds. Right now, I'm going to go to the resources. Okay. Here we go. So this is where I got the hummingbird sounds from. If you go to Operation Ruby Throat, basically any questions you want to know about it, go there. Journey North will show you the migration map, and you can know when to start putting your feeders out. And then this is Bella Hummingbird. She shows live cams of hummingbirds in their nest. And then here's all my resources. This is all my social media, and just type in Judy Royal Glenn. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, pretty much all of it. Okay, here's a special surprise. So right now on my kitchen counter, I have about a lot. I don't even want to say a number. But what I will do, if you'll go to my Facebook page, and then if you'll like it, follow it. And in about a week, I'm going to put up a photo that says nominations open. And I will release a butterfly for you in memory or honor of somebody. So what you would do is, once you see that photo saying their nominations are open, you would tell me the person's name and tell me a little bit about them. And then I will try to get a video or a photo, and then I'll send that back to you. So there's what you would need to do to have one, but that's my pride and joy, are these monarchs. And I had a lot of people that really enjoyed me releasing them for them. So if you're actually here in Tennessee, you can come over to Knoxville, and then I'll let you be here when we do it. So, but I really apologize for my throat going out.
That's okay.
Does anybody go ahead?
No, that's great. So how about taking your screen down? And I've got a couple of questions that I want to throw at you if you're up for that.
Sure. Let me see if there, let me get another sip of water.
Yeah. Not a problem. That'll give me a minute to organize here. Okay. So not everybody's from Texas, but quite a few people are here from Texas. And I know that we have the ruby-throated hummingbirds. And I believe somebody in the chat might have said that we have the dark-chinned, because the question was, are all of the hummers red throats? And the answer is probably no. So I'm assuming that, yeah.
When I actually came out to Texas, that was another thing before I answer that. I researched where your hummingbirds were, and there was a park that was there. And so when my husband was sitting in the car, I sat at the base of this plant, and then the hummingbirds were there. So that was another thing. But y'all, the dark chin that ends up being purple, that was the one that I got there. But over here on the east, so if you take the United States and you split it in half, this eastern side is basically the ruby throat. And then over west, y'all have like out in California, they have like, I think 10, maybe 11 different species out there.
Okay. Wow.
So now if it's ruby throat, it still can be white because it's the female, but the male is the one that has the red.
They're always the pretty ones. Do you know or can you tell us how big hummingbird eggs are?
Yeah, when I'd actually teach my classes, I would give everybody a jelly belly jelly bean. Oh. And I'd put it in their hand, and that's the size. So that kind of gave them a perspective.
Okay. So I think you said it earlier, but if you'll repeat it, what is your go-to lens for hummingbirds? Maybe your go-to lens in general.
Well, the 200 to 500 millimeter, add on the teleconverter, I get a lot more reach. But now that I have this 500 prime, for hummingbirds, that will be my to-go lens for hummingbirds, and then add the teleconverter to it.
Okay. So you must shoot a Nikon.
I do.
Which one?
D810. D810, yes.
Okay. this is really working out for Linda, because I shoot a Nikon and I have that lens. So I struggle with speed. Those birds are way too fast for me. So we're going to be talking about a focus system at some point, just you and me. So Gary wanted to know, when you shoot many frames per second, do you shoot in JPEG or are you shooting in RAW? And which size of file do you use?
I always shoot in RAW because it collects the most data for each one. The hard part with that is, well, it doesn't matter which one, but I shoot so many frames. It's trying to go down and delete which one's the best is what I hate about shooting a bunch. But what size what was the question?
Yeah, yeah, he was asking like, which size of the file do you use? I'm assuming because there's small, medium, large when you're picking. I'm assuming if you're shooting in RAW, you get the large size. So right. I hope that answered your question, Gary. If not, if you'll get back in the chat. But the second part of his question was, do you pay attention to the speed of the SD or the CF card?
I will get the one that's faster, but I don't know if that affects anything else but for how quickly that it downloads. Like for photography reasons, I'm not really sure if it affects anything that way. I just get a faster one, so I get it on my computer faster.
And then let me see here. I'm toggling back and forth today. Mika was curious, do you shoot all of your videos with your cell phone or are you using your camera?
Now the couple that I had on there, that when I fed them out of my hand and stuff, that was just cell phone. But I am really starting to just strictly do all video on the camera. So shooting at 1/16 of a second, shooting manual so that I can change the exposure via exposure compensation, so I can add in more light or take it away.
Okay. I think there is one question that's not related to hummingbirds. So let me find that real quick. Sue is curious. She wanted to know, how do you raise monarchs in your home?
It's okay. How do I do a long story short? So on my counter right now, I have a humongous milkweed plant, and I left it with my friend so that they would be a lot of eggs on them. Then I put a string where each egg was, and then I cut off each egg and I put it in a container. And then once they hatch, then I put them in a different container. Then long story short, then I get the little butterfly cages, and then I put a plant in the butterfly cage, and then the rest of it, I let them raise themselves. But I used to not do that way. That's the easiest way to do it. But the reason that you want the cages around them is because tattnid flies will lay their eggs in that caterpillar, and other bugs will harm them. Only 10% make it in the wild. So that's why tattnid flies, yes, that's what it is. So if you have the cage and you have the plant in there and the caterpillars on there, nothing bothers them. And then I let them crawl off, go to the top of the cage and make the chrysalis inside the cage. That's long, but the shortest I can get it.
Okay. No, that's interesting. So any of my Texas pals take good notes, because I don't have the time or the patience to raise my own monarchs, but I'll come over to your house if you've got them.
So, well, what I was going to say too is all the videos that are on there, it's on YouTube. Just go Judy Royal Glenn, and you can. I actually did a time lapse of a monarch from the chrysalis to where it came out, and then also from caterpillar going into a chrysalis. Okay. So yes, but the video part I'm really getting into and learning more, but I really, really, really enjoy it. And then you can go on there and see the videos.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about having a bunch of people in a room, because you're talking about, your your collection of monarchs. And I'm thinking, wow, there's like, that's kind of crazy. But here's another crazy. Kathy Chassie says she's got 50-ish monarch caterpillars too. So she lives a lot closer. So Kathy, I just need an address to come visit. Oh my gosh, this is so hilarious. Okay, I'm gonna pretty much wrap you up. Is there anything that you want to close this out with? I know you shared a lot of information, and based on the chat, everybody is agreeing that you've got some beautiful images, and we really appreciate that you took the time and came to talk to us, and hopefully our hummingbird photography will improve just a little bit after listening to you.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you want to just close us out with, or are you happy?
I'm happy. I'm so sorry that my voice totally went out. I had to cut it short, but
no, that's okay.
I'm hoping that what I taught you today will help you to find them better and then photograph great shots.
I think it's a great start. Okay, so guys, first of all, Judy, thank you for coming on and doing this. I really appreciate it. I ran across Judy. I ran one of the pages. It's kind of a nature page, macro page. It's called Inspire Nature Now. And Judy was somebody that followed the page early on, I think. And I just kept thinking Judy Royal Glenn, which we kind of joked about earlier, because I had asked her, is your name Judy Glenn or Judy Royal Glenn? And because in my mind, you're always going to be Judy Royal Glenn. But Aaron mentioned that we should change it to call you Royal Judy. So we'll work on that here in Texas. But you'd followed that page, and I kind of, followed along with you for a long time. And for whatever reason, I went and I clicked on your links and got to your website and went, oh my God. I was just really kind of fascinated that every major city has botanical gardens. And as you wander through them, you don't really pay attention to all the planning that goes into creating one. And when I had read in your bio that you basically developed this trail, I was fascinated by that. And I thought, what if you come and talk to my group? And
well,
then,
I don't want you to give me that much credit. Okay, how do I say this? I took the garden, it was already planted, and then I just showed them within the garden where to find them. So don't give me that much credit.
Okay, I won't give you that much credit. But the fact that you spent a lot of time looking and observing and documenting, and then you took that extra step to share it with, the people in that garden. And it just, it's just that gift that keeps giving. And all of a sudden, you're talking to 25 strangers that are on a Zoom that you have not met any of us, but you've inspired me a little bit. I was kind of figuring out, maybe I need to go to Georgia and check out this botanical garden. So that's what's fun, is that you just never know where you're, what you're doing. You never know who you're influencing or inspiring. And for this much, you did here. So thank you very much for that. Find out a little bit more about Judy on her website, and that's judyroyalglennphotography.com. And if you're on Instagram, please give her a follow at Judy Royal Glenn Photography. So next week, Warren Simons will be here to introduce us to the art of seeing. So until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you again soon.